The Washington Post, the LA Times, and USA Today have all declined to endorse one of the presidential candidates this year. I want to focus on the Washington Post because this is where I think kind of the meat of the story is. Reports came out that word came down from the top of the company, which just so happens to be owned by Jeff Bezos, that the paper and the editorial board shouldn't make an endorsement. Instantly, there was backlash in the room, in the editorial room. There were resignations that happened, and one of the former editors from the Post tweeted that this is kind of Bezos just kind of bending the knee to Trump. I think it's a very interesting, like, wider discussion to have. Bezos today put out his own op-ed.
Yeah.
And he argued that Americans don't trust the media anymore. And because of that, they will only kind of sow greater distrust if they explicitly endorse one of the candidates. And so that's why he declined to do so. What do you think of his argument?
I think that not endorsing a candidate will not have any effect on the conservative mind of if the Washington Post is an objective media source at all. I do not think it will matter.
You think that mind is made up about it not being objective?
Yeah, because conservatives just simply do not exist in fact. And so the Washington Post will continue to report fact and will continue to disbelieve and disprove the conservative agenda. And they will continue to push back on all Republican talking points because all of them happen to be wrong. And the conservatives will still not believe the Washington Post. Conservatives will still come out and say that they're eating cats and dogs in Springfield, Ohio, and then Washington Post will run a story how that's not true. Conservatives will still say that tariffs won't cause inflation. The Washington Post will put a story out and say that's not true. The conservatives will still say that crime is going up and it's skyrocketing. It's the worst it's ever been. And the Washington Post will post a story and say, well, that's not true. So the entire conservative mind is a delusion.
So you're completely aligned with the belief that Bezos is doing this so that a future Trump presidency won't result in unfair government treatment to his other companies.
I'm glad you brought that up. I think it's two things. I think Jeff Bezos could actually believe what he's saying in this article.
Okay.
I don't think he's lying.
Okay.
I think Jeff Bezos actually believes that if he doesn't endorse Trump, he will attract more conservative readers. And then that will be good for society as a whole because more people are going to be reading his newspaper, and he believes his newspaper is the most trustworthy, most accurate newspaper. I think he believes that.
Okay.
I think he's wrong for the reason I just stated.
Okay.
Okay. Now, do I also think he's bending the knee? Yes.
Okay.
I do.
I agree with that analysis of Bezos. I believe that he's actually being forthright in his op-ed. But I also think, like, one of the people who resigned from the Post tweeted that direct evidence that he was doing this to please Trump was that Trump met with the executives of Blue Origin, which is Bezos' space company, the day after it came out that the Post wouldn't make the endorsement. So I think it's clear that Bezos is hedging a little bit here.
Yeah, well,
right?
This is what I want to say. I think all elites are hedging right now.
Me too.
Because I think all elites are hedging. Because the truth is, Donald Trump, when he takes the reins of power, will use that power for his own ends.
Yes.
He has said so explicitly.
Yes.
Multiple times, okay? And they do not want to be on the opposite end of that. He put out a tweet, not just saying that he was going to go after rioters and looters. He said Democratic Party donors. He's going to go after the donors. I'm a donor. Is he going to go after me? Okay, so all these elites are now hedging themselves.
Yes.
And they are scared of what a fascist might do in office. And this frustrates me, though, because I think the first step of letting a fascist win is censoring yourself for him.
I agree. Well, it's so funny, God, because the Post, the tagline of the Washington Post is "Democracy dies in darkness."
Yeah.
Right. So
democracy dies in cowardice.
Yeah, it's perfect oxymoron, I guess. I don't know if that's the right word. It's paradoxical. This is kind of the biggest fear of a government that descends into fascism, right? Is that the only messaging that freedom of thought becomes constricted, freedom of expression. And it doesn't have to be that you're thrown in jail,
yes,
right?
Perfect.
It doesn't have to be that. It's just if you're mistreated by the government, if you're no longer in a level playing field with the businesses that you care about, or the way that you're allowed to express yourself in public with what you wear, or the gender you identify as. Like, it's your freedoms are restricted because you're not in the inner circle of the rulers.
And you could be socially constricted, and that's what Jeff Bezos is finding right now.
Mm-hmm.
The Washington Post is constricting its speech, it's constricting its opinions because it wants to appease some social group. And
yes,
the reason he wants to appease the social group is not because of some larger vision of justice or of justice, like you want to censor racists or something. It's not that. He's censoring himself out of fear of retribution from a social group, the conservatives in this country. And Jeff Bezos is naive if he thinks that this is going to get him any credit with conservative media.
Do you think so?
Yeah.
I think this can, I mean, maybe not with conservative media. I think this can buy him a little bit of breathing room with Trump if Trump himself is the president.
Oh,
right?
Trump himself,
with Trump
yes.
and Elon and like anyone else who's one of his cronies.
Yes, I just don't think conservatives are going to go subscribe to the Washington Post, but I do think this buys some credit with Trump and Elon.
Yeah, I mean, maybe they won't subscribe to the Washington Post.
He already lost 8% of Washington Post viewers.
Sure, but those aren't his main revenue streams. Like he's not really imagining the future and being excited about the future because of the Washington Post. That's where his other companies come into play.
Okay, but that makes me think you do think Jeff Bezos is lying, because in his op-ed, he is only focused on the growth of the Washington Post.
Okay, I think I don't think he's necessarily lying about. I think I agree with him that it might put the Post and other media organizations right now, including the LA Times and USA Today, in a better position to not be explicitly aligning themselves with either party. Like I think I give him credit for that. That's something that I want for this show. Okay. I want to be seen and to be trusted as not in the pocket of either side. And the more obviously that you are making straw man arguments, so that you're only taking one person's side, or you're not actually considering like the validity of what the other side might be saying or thinking, the more likely it is that you're not going to be able to connect with anyone that's either in the middle or on the other side.
I get that, but we endorse Kamala Harris.
Sure,
but that doesn't mean that we're not objective.
Maybe it doesn't mean it, but it does mean that anyone who sees it will, like, anyone on the right who sees this probably automatically discounts us.
But does that mean you think that we shouldn't have endorsed Kamala Harris on the show? Like, we shouldn't say that we're voting for Kamala?
I guess I'm indifferent to it because we're so small. Like I think.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. I get that. If you wanted to go from the size thing, I get that. That's fine.
Yes. Like anyone who looks it up ever will be able to know what the Washington Post is. Like that it's a liberal newspaper, and that they'll be able to find its endorsements online with Google in the snap of a finger. Right. I feel like there is some validity here to insulating yourself from automatically being discounted by a massive cohort of potential readership.
I think my issue with that is my issue with this is you're not putting the onus on the readership to go the level deeper. And I feel like, again, you're treating them like children and you're playing into their delusion by appeasing them by not telling the whole truth. The whole truth is that Kamala Harris is the better candidate. Okay? That's the whole truth for like reasons A, B, C through Z. Okay? And by not saying that, I feel like you're restricting the truth to people because you're trying to appease some delusional base.
I don't think it's like that. I mean, I get your point about treating people like children, but I don't know if it's right to say it's acting like they're children, to understand that it makes sense that people are averse to biased sources of information right now, and that they want to feel like they're making decisions for themselves rather than being told what they should do, otherwise they're wrong. And I feel like that's been the problem with liberals in general, and especially liberals in the media, since at least Trump came out of the scene.
Sure.
Right. And so it makes sense to give, and this is what Bezos is trying to argue for in his op-ed, is that they'll keep giving reasons A, B, C through Z, and then people will be able to take those, and maybe they'll be more influential because people will look at the reasons and they'll be like, oh, after these, I understand why it makes more sense to vote for Kamala than it does for Trump.
Okay. So, okay. That does make more sense. My issue with Jeff Bezos is if he starts hiring people that is going to say, oh, wait a second, maybe a cat was eaten in Springfield. That's my problem.
Yes.
That's what I get scared of.
If he both sides it,
If he both sides it is the
tries to
problem.
be like there's an equivalent,
Yes.
if there's an equivalent like concern on the right as there is on the left.
And so when I see no endorsement, I take that as a both sides approach, because historically newspapers have endorsed. That, you see what I'm saying? So like
I
historically,
suppose, but not all newspapers endorse all the time.
You're right.
Yeah.
Most, or I shouldn't say most because I don't have the stats on me, but a lot
Yes,
do.
sure.
A lot of many local newspapers endorse, right?
Yes.
The Houston Chronicle, the
Yes.
Missouri Star, I think, is another one that does it all the time. The Pittsburgh Courier in the 30s was very influential. So like they do.
But to me, this is reflecting the changing times of the fractured media environment. This isn't them like deteriorating in their integrity as a news organization or as a media organization. It's more just understanding that trying to tell people explicitly right and wrong, good and bad, is more likely to just send them to other places that aren't going to like attack their personal identity.
Oh, I know, but this is my problem, and this is my frustration. It's like, if your identity is that the 2020 election is stolen, your identity isn't worth listening to.
Sure.
You know what I mean? It's like you're not worth pandering to.
But if that's the case, then like what Bezos is saying, and what I'm hoping he'll actually execute, as far as still giving the reasons A, B, C through Z for whoever reads the reasons to understand that Kamala is the one to vote for. The person who believes that the 2020 election is stolen still isn't going to like give that the time of day.
Right.
But this is a spectrum.
Yeah.
Right. And like you're going to take more people off the margin that might actually listen to you.
I get that. And I hope he's right, and I hope I'm wrong.